What's up, YouTube? This is Bison X79, guys. Today I'm coming to my latest deck profile video for September 2020. And today, guys, we're going to be looking at my Zombie World deck. Now, years ago, before the Zombie Horde structure that came out, Zombie World was all about building your resources into your graveyard and then getting these huge explosive synchro plays that can leave the field with Beals and Scrap Dragon that can clear your opponent's cards off the board very easily. Nowadays, the deck is a more control aspect, negating monster effects, banishing stuff off your opponent's field, and even restricting them to playing particular types of monsters. With that being said, this deck does have that control aspect. It can break boards, and it can even put up some pretty surprising monsters onto the field. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this deck. 2 copies of Doom King Balderak. Balderak, if this card's in your graveyard during your standby phase, you can special summon to your field in defense position. And then once per chain, you can get one of 2 effects. You can negate the activation of one of your opponent's monster effects. That happens to be a zombie, and that's not that hard with Zombie World in this deck. The other thing is you can actually just banish the card off your opponent's field. So it gives you one of those effects during the chain. You can only use each effect of those effects once, but still, hey, it's a great card. The control aspect is real, and it's going to be very useful in the long run. 2 copies of Necroworld Banshee. What does Necroworld Banshee do? While she's face up on the field, she protects your Zombie World from being destroyed. Opponent can't target it with card effects, which is actually pretty awesome. The real awesome effect is she has a quick effect where you can banish her out of your graveyard and activate a Zombie World from your deck or your hand onto your field during your opponent's turn. So she acts like a metaverse for this particular deck, and that's a very awesome card to have. 2 copies of Glow Bloom. Glow Bloom, huge card in this deck, primarily because if you send this card to the graveyard, you could actually either get a search for a zombie monster to add to your hand, or if you have Zombie World up, you can special summon it right to the field. This is the key way to actually getting Doom King out onto the field real fast, and because of that, you want to be able to discard that card into the grave. For me, I'm actually liking 2 copies of Jack Bolin for this deck. It's a discard cost for a special summon, which fits insanely well with this deck, being able to load your graveyard with what you need. Also, can take monsters off your opponent's field. By banishing them, it returns to the field. The opponent's monster remains banished, so that's actually pretty awesome. And playing keep away with your opponent's monsters, always a good thing. Okay, we also are having the 3 copies of the Shiranui Solitaire. Solitaire, very key important card because this card you tribute it off and you can get a zombie type monster with 0 defense onto your field, and Glow Boom is one of them. But the other card that you would want to be doing would be one of the 2 copies of Unizombie. Unizombie, the key tuner in Zombie World decks ever since it was released. By pitching cards from your deck to your graveyard, you can modify the levels of itself or other monsters on the field, allowing you to be able to go into maybe different Xyz plays or even synchro plays. So that's actually very awesome. I like running the 2 to 3 ratio of Solitaire to Unizombie, primarily because you have Glow Bloom as that other target. And of course, we have the customary 2 copies of Mizuki. Card in your graveyard acts as a monster reborn by banishing it. 1 copy of Gozuki. Primary reason why I have 1 copy is because you already have a lot of different ways of getting cards from your deck into your graveyard. This is just one extra way of doing it. You got Vampire Frolane. Frolane, awesome battle trap. Special summon it to your field, and you can pay life points in amounts of 100 to power boost the attacking zombie monsters, so we could go over your opponent's cards, which is actually pretty awesome. And last but not least, we're also running 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. I think Ash Blossom is pretty self-explanatory, stopping your opponent from touching their deck, searching, or just sending cards to the graveyard. It just helps this deck, and it adds an extra interruption into the deck as well. Onto the spells, I'm running 2 copies of Book of Life, primarily because I like the extra extenders in this particular deck. It's a Monster Reborn for zombie-type monsters, and if your opponent has monsters in the graveyard, guess what? They're losing them. So, yes, this is actually a very awesome card to have. Just being able to restrict your opponent's graveyard, it just helps so much. And speaking of taking cards out of the graveyard, we are also running 3 copies of Call by the Grave. You have to run this card. You don't want to be hand-trapped by any cards out there. Negate that. And it also has that quick effect where you can just banish cards out of your opponent's graveyard to basically stop them from extending themselves. So it definitely does come in handy. One more copy of Foolish Burial because, hey, getting zombies into the graveyard, that's pretty key in this deck. Monster Reborn, self-explanatory, bring back any monsters from either graveyards. And of course, we have the biggest and best board breaker of all, 3 copies of Super Polymerization. I love having this card in this deck. It just allows you to get into some pretty nasty fusion monsters and break apart your opponent's board. So definitely 3 copies. The discard effect helps this deck as well. And then last but not least, you can't be running a Zombie World deck without your 3 copies of Zombie World and 1 copy of Terraforming. So essentially it's kind of like 4 copies of Zombie World if you want to include Necro Banshee's graveyard effect, 6 copies. You get the idea. Basically, it turns all monsters on the field and in the graveyards into zombie-type monsters. And if your opponent has a particular deck that requires you to summon monsters of a particular, I'll have a monster of a particular type on the field in order to summon other monsters from your hand, you're pretty much screwed. Moving forward, to help you regulate your opponent's field, 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. Any mono-type deck can really make use of this card because it just restricts your opponent so hard. It's not even funny. And with Zombie World up, yeah, they're stuck with zombies. Can't access their extra deck. Can't be special summoning cards from their hand. If they require a particular type of monsters, you get the whole idea. It's just such a worthwhile card in this deck. And me, I do like to err more on the side of caution, so I'm running 3 copies of Solemn Judgment in this deck just to protect your Zombie World as well as your Rivalry while face up on the field. It can also stop your opponent from summoning really powerful monsters onto the field as well, so it's definitely a great trap card to have. I know some people might want to add more draw power into this deck. Pot of Extravagance definitely is something usable in this. Allure of Darkness is another, but you don't really have that many dark monsters mained, and you don't want to be losing those dark monsters either, so it's better, in my opinion, to go with the trap card just for a little extra defense. Moving on to the extra deck, I have 2 copies of the Draco Necro Nether Soul Dragon. Oh man, 2 zombie monsters to make this guy, and then he can actually attack into your opponent's monsters, bottom up their attacks, create a token with that monster's OG attack, and you'd be able to attack over them with a token with that much attack, which is actually pretty damn awesome. And because of Super Polymerization and Zombie World, you can just break apart your opponent's boards that way. Of course, I am also running, there are dark tribute monsters in this, so I am running Starving Venom Fusion Dragon in this deck. Monster Effect Negation, pretty self-explanatory. For the synchros, I have the Shiranui Squire Saga as well as Shogun Saga. They just basically allow you to do a lot of different things and build into higher synchros. So actually very awesome. We got Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon, stealing monsters from your opponent's graveyard when it destroys them, which is actually cool. And of course, I am running Beals as well as Omega. Omega rips cards out of your opponent's hands and gets banished cards back into your graveyard. Beals is just a problematic monster that your opponent can't attack or or destroyed with card effects. So even if they have a bigger monster, this card's going to get bigger as well every time they swing over it. So always a great card to have. I do run Zombie Stein. I like this over Lancelot. I know Lancelot can hit directly, but this card also has a built-in negate. It is a bit beefier, so you can actually utilize it to swing over more problematic monsters if your only recourse is to battle them. And of course we have the Zombie Lynx, a Vidret Savior, and Vampire Sucker. Pretty standard in most zombie decks right now. Nightmare Package, Unicorn to spin cards back to the deck, Phoenix for back row hate. And then of course I am running Predator for the Anaconda primarily because it's just another way to get super polymerization going. And its first effect allowing you to turn all monsters onto the field into dark attributes. This helps you get into your Starving Venom even easier. And last but not least, I like running Boral Sword. I've tried other links in there. Boral Load, in my opinion, not Boral Sword, is another field breaker. Can steal your opponent's monsters, power them down. It's just worth it, and it fits well in with the rest of the theme for the deck. So, Boral Load it is. Guys, that is it for my Zombie World deck profile for September 2020. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this on my channel, make sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss any uploads. Check out the description box below. Find the links to my affiliates, tcgplayer.com, as well as sidedeckversus.com. Great resources for any Yu-Gi-Oh player. Follow me on social media. And if you guys want to help grow my community to even greater heights, the invite link to my Discord server is also in the description box below. Join the conversation. We'd love to have you. As always, guys, until next time, peace.